Welcome to Invisible Player. I'm going to introduce some people to you in a few minutes as we get the chairs out to talk about the process that we've gone through. This story is one of probably thousands in this country of African Americans who have been ignored or put in other places and not recognized for their talents and abilities. And so it's a labor of love for me right now because I'm from Chicago. And when I found out about the Chicago Symphony, I was incensed. I went to the Chicago Symphony as a kid. We went to concerts. Never dawned on me that nobody like me was sitting up there. That's what and to meet young Tage Larson, who's been there now he got there 2002, so 23 years. He is still the only African-American in the South Bend Symphony, in the Chicago Symphony. They just hired their first Latina this year in the Chicago Symphony. I'll let that alone. So Chuck and Ryan, Kristie, and Helen, and we will have a little discussion. So this project began with a lot of research, and the History Museum has been very helpful, very, very helpful in getting things started. And Kristie Erickson is the Deputy Assistant Director of the History Museum. She has so many titles. But I want her to talk a little bit about South Bend in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and 50s. Rosemary came here when she was 5 because she had tuberculosis. And she was sent here because of the sanitarium that is now the Hansel Center on Washington Avenue. And that's where she stayed for over a year. So, Kristie?
Yeah, thank you. So we have 4 decades of South Bend history to cover, so everybody buckle up. But Rosemary was sent here in the 20s. And in the 20s, tuberculosis was one of the worst threats to public health in the United States. And the Hansel Center, the children's dispensary on West Washington Street, was a brand new facility that catered to children who needed help, especially with deadly diseases like tuberculosis. And so that was helpful for her. But also in the 1920s in South Bend and in Indiana in general, which I think I've talked about on this stage before, was the Ku Klux Klan was extremely prevalent in Indiana and in the nation, and kind of brought on by an increase in immigration in the United States. What you often see is when things start to change and people start to sense their world around them becoming different than what they're used to, groups like the Klan tend to gain strength in reaction to that, something that I think we might all recognize in our world today, if I may speak boldly. But so that happened in the 20s. And then Rosemary is here with her now adopted parents. Moving on into the 1930s, during the Great Depression, things changed a little bit.
Want to try this one?
I sure do.
Yeah, try it out. Try it out. Any better?
Is it better? It's better. Okay, I don't have to use my podcast voice with this one. So we have the Great Depression, and somebody like Rosemary is becoming interested in music, but it's tough for musicians of color in the area and for people of color in general. The Musicians Union doesn't allow African American folks in South Bend in the 30s, and so many large venues like the Palais Royal may not allow non-unionized people to be in their orchestras, so those were de facto segregated. And at the same time, schools were also de facto segregated. It wasn't an official policy, but neighborhood schooling at the time meant that restrictions in people being able to buy housing in certain areas and redlining concentrated groups of people into certain neighborhoods and thus in certain schools, and thus those schools didn't get the resources that you'd see in other parts of town. So a famous example of that is Linden School, which was a predominantly African-American school, and the ceiling fell in the 1960s because it was so poorly managed, versus Riley High School, which was a very nice school when Rosemary went there, and that was because she was able to live in a very predominantly white neighborhood on Bowman Street near the Studebaker Golf Course, because her parents were able to pay for their house in cash. And it was in a neighborhood that banks would not give African American families loans for homes, and that was the only way that many people were able to live in that neighborhood and thus access those resources that might be available. And it's such a good example of kind of that generational trauma that you see from some of those instances. So she was able to attend a good school and was able to be in the orchestra at that school and kind of move from there. And then again in the 1940s, things began to change again with World War II. And what you saw in South Bend, and especially with musicians, is that the union started allowing African Americans in because so many of their white players had either joined the army or left their jobs to work in factories, and they couldn't get enough people to fill out their bands. So it wasn't out of the kindness of their hearts, it was because they were short trumpet players or something like that. So, and then you started getting integrated bands and audiences, and even with a famous boycott by Lionel Hampton, the percussionist, who had one of the first integrated bands at the Palais Royal, he said that if the audience wasn't integrated, that he was going to stop in the middle of his most famous tune and tell everybody that was there to never ever come back to another event at the Palais again. Unless they allowed that event to be integrated, and thus the Palais events were integrated after that. So, so these are both stories of inspiration, but also, you know, there's challenges every step of the way. And that's enough for me right now. You're not here to see me, you're here to see Helen. So.
Actually, I'm gonna, before we get to Helen, I wanna go to Chuck and Ryan. Chuck is the director, he thinks, but he's a director, and Ryan is this phenomenal cinematographer. And these two guys I met a couple years ago, and they have followed me around the country and followed the story. So I want them to talk, and then we'll get to Helen. So, Chuck.
Over to you, Chuck.
Join the club.
Sheesh, so many mics. Did you guys hear? Did you hear the movie? Okay. You heard it? Okay, great. Oh, thanks. Is that gonna work? Okay. So I'm Chuck, and this is Ryan, and like Marvin said, thanks. That when we first started talking, Marvin and I had worked on a couple of projects together, and he invited me to Nick's Patio to tell me about this idea, and I brought Ryan along, and really it was going to be me directing just kind of when I could, and it was kind of like this really cool, like local, regional story, you know what I mean? But the more Marvin dug and went to the library and called me late at night and texted me early in the morning, this became bigger with every turn and like every person we interviewed. And I feel like we are both making this movie because there is a lot of traveling involved, and I'm not the best traveler. So Marvin's telling me about like, oh, we're going to go to Vegas, and we've met Rosemary's daughter, and we're going to go out there and talk to her, and I'm like rejoicing inside because this is so cool. We get to talk to her, but I'm just dying. You know what I mean? Because I have to get on an airplane. You know what I mean? And so we did it. But I feel like just kind of with the anxiety and stuff like that, it would just be better, and just for the budget, let's be honest here, it would just be better if Marvin and Ryan rolled. And I just really feel like in an email the other day, they were like, how do we want to credit this? Chuck, are you the director? Let me tell you, when I am there, it's really Marvin running the show, honestly. Like, we get people in, I make them feel very comfortable, and just, I'll tell them I'm gonna take out all the ums and the buts and the edits and stuff like that, and just to be themselves, it's not the news. Sometimes I'll lob out like a good question if I'm feeling, the spirit move me, but really Marvin's got it. There are times, I know a gentleman in here talked about like, when he, met the person, he said, I had no idea you were Black. sometimes I feel like when I open the door to people, they're like, in their mind, like, oh, I had no idea you were white, honestly. Honestly, you know, because I'm helping out Marvin, but you know, I do sometimes ask me why he asked Ryan and I to do this, you know, and Ryan's just been really killing it, like in New York and in Houston and in California. Those are places I wish I could have gone, you know, to meet these people, but I stayed back in the cut and wait till he got back and saw this footage, and I just melted. It's so good. It's everything I would have wanted. He's making my dreams come true, and I trust him, and I just love him. And we've been working together like 10, 11 years. So this is really cool the way this is all kind of happening. And yeah, that's kind of the process. People come in, we talk to them. Like Marvin said, we've talked to like 30 some odd people. We've still got some more people to talk to. I really want to talk to Kristie on camera because she really knows like really good history of South Bend, and we need that. I'm also going to need her to like fact check. That's something, you know, because we're just kind of taking dates and times at face value, you know, which is really heady in documentary style. So having someone just kind of look at that before we put out, I like coming up with these ideas, right? Like, so the director, like, so what I want to do is like, clearly we have to do some kind of like reenactment. That sounds kind of like a cheesy word, kind of, but almost find someone who can portray Rosemary. You know what I mean? And kind of get like her from behind or the shadows in slow motion. And actually, I think we found someone, and they're in Rosemary's family, which is
My granddaughter.
It's Helen's granddaughter is gonna. I know. It's things like that. Every little thing. I'm just like. And when I interviewed Marvin the other day, I was like, "Yo, do you lose sleep at night? You know, do you lose sleep?" And he's just like, "You know, I don't anymore, but I'm excited every day." And that is so cool, you know what I mean? Because I am, you know, I also talked about this in the interview with him. I was just like, let's be candid. We're both getting kind of old, you know. Marvin, do you feel like this is your swan song? Because this could be mine. You know, I'm 48. Like this is a lot, you know.
Oh, please.
And Marvin said, no way. Marvin said, no way. There's still other things to come. And that was
Exactly.
so inspiring to me, Marvin. And I've just learned so much, not only about Helen and just being inspired about her and Rosemary, but I've just learned a lot about just friendships and relationships. Marvin has so many friends and is constantly texting with them when we're on the road. And it's just been a wonderful, like, too good to be true, like, experience. And I'm just so thankful. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Ryan, and yeah, Chuck is very much involved in all this, and I think he's underselling himself a little bit. But I think this has been this is not the first time we've worked with Marvin. We worked with Marvin probably 3 or 4 years ago with the symphony, doing a short documentary that aired on WNIT about Juneteenth. It was called a Juneteenth celebration. And that was kind of our first exposure into working with Marvin and then also working with the symphony. And I really personally fell in love with that whole process. And then we did it again, going to local churches in our area, and the symphony also performed in these churches, and that was called Celebration for a King. And so that was, and then Marvin took us to Nick's patio and had this amazing idea, and I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's see where this goes. And yeah, Marvin is so well connected in this world, and it's very evident. Well, I mean, we arrive in New York, and all these musicians are like, "Hey, I didn't know you were going to be here," and like he knows everyone, and it's been real inspiring just to watch him interact with everyone, and it's inspiring too. Like when we started this, Marvin had some health issues, and he had a real hard time getting around. So we were helping him through the airport, and I've watched him just physically be able to move a lot more in the last year. And so it's been amazing to like have travel around the country with Marvin, watch him recover and do all this. I mean, it's incredible what he's able to do every day, and just has all the energy in the world. And yeah, it's been an amazing project to work on, and we have a lot more to go. And it's also been really inspiring to watch Helen. And I've been really inspired how you documented your entire family's history. And I think you gave everyone in your family a copy of that. And for me, that's very much of what my family does too, is we save things and document it. And I think that's probably what inspired me to be a filmmaker and document stories. And so it's been great to see that you preserved all this, and that now we can tell this story properly and to the world. And it's so many people are interested all over the country. Everyone is surprised by this story, and also it's shocking to see how many stories are still being echoed even today. I mean, that quote of 1% during your mother's time and now only 2% now is just shocking to me. So yeah, I'm so proud to be a part of this project, and I'm very grateful.
Can I have 30 more seconds? I'm stealing the mic for another 30 seconds, but just to add on to that, in the importance of documenting that kind of thing, especially as, your local historical society, one of the things I really love about this project is how it got started, and that was mentioned by Marvin too. And what had happened was Helen donated a letter and a photo to the museum, and one of our staff decided we used to have an article in the South Bend Tribune with local history, and wrote that up in the Tribune about, this young woman that played for the symphony. And then years later, Marvin reads this article and says, I want to know more about this, and then comes to various people, to us and to the library and to the symphony to learn more. And now look, we're all here together, and this fantastic documentary is getting made, and we're all learning so much about, national history and how important this is. So just from that little seed of her having this idea to give this to the museum to something that's so meaningful to so many people. So there you go.
Thank you. So we are very happy to have Helen here. She came in this week. The bad news is that Helen's daughter passed away on Sunday of cancer, and so Helen came in early, but she still came to us, and she's here, and she's going back to Elkhart tomorrow. But in spite of that tragedy, she felt this was important to be here. And so I'm going to let her talk for a few minutes about her mom, who I've gotten to know through Helen and through the letters and through the articles. But this is a piece of living history, because it was her mother who was probably the first African-American female in any orchestra in America, probably, in 1940. She had to audition to get in the orchestra. She just didn't walk in. She attended the Sherwood School of Music, which was one of the most prestigious conservatories at that time. She had to audition. So this was not, I'm giving you a seat. This is, I earned this. But they gave her a seat in the back. So, Helen, it's on you.
Well, I'm such a hoarder of pictures and everything, What I did was I made this book for each one of my children, of course, all who are grown now, 2 boys and 2 girls. Going all the way back to the early 1800s, my great aunt and uncle, her brother, they were freed. They had freedom papers, and I was able to preserve those. Now, my aunt got free in 1818, but her brother did not, so she waited another 20 years for him so that they could come here together. And they came to the city of Vandalia, and later their children settled in Cassopolis, Michigan, but they came by way of the Underground Railroad. So anyway, I kept these artifacts and papers and pictures, not even thinking that I would be doing something like this. one day. But I also had, for my mom, this was like the year before she passed, I wrote an article for the newspaper, and it was about her birthday. She was going to be 95. And so because of that article in the South Bend Tribune, she got 100 birthday cards that year, and I was so glad that she did that. The other thing I want to say with her is that her music was everything to her. Playing the violin, and she actually encouraged me, but I couldn't hold a candle to her. I mean, she was actually a child prodigy, just to begin playing that well. And so I played through high school, and I was done with it. I was better off with my voice. I love to sing. But I wanted to say this little tidbit. She had the violin, the Strad, but it was destroyed in a fire on Bowman. It just broke my heart. But what I did, I bought her another violin, but it was not a Strad. And I took it to the nursing home for her. And she had dementia, in the later stages. And I thought, I'm going to try something here. So what I did was place the violin in her hand, the bow in the other. And I had a concerto on a CD that she just loved. And so I was kind of humming to it, and she was holding the violin. And for one split second, that bow went choop, like that. And I was just floored, because it had been years since she held the instrument. But she was done with it at that point, and she handed it back to me. Like, I'm finished. This is enough. This is all you're going to get, So those are memories that I'll always have in my heart of her. And also, as I was a little girl, watching her teach Notre Dame students at home. And so she was very, very encouraging with them. She was patient, but if you didn't play it right, you knew. And she stayed right on them until they got it right. And there were several of the students that actually kept in touch with her, and they would write letters. And she would get these letters and read them, and it just overjoyed her, But I'm so, so proud to have worked with these people here. Have been just awesome. And Dr. Marvin, I always call him Dr. Marvin. And, he didn't mind calling me at midnight. But it was midnight for him. It was 9 o'clock in Vegas, so I was still good, But he has so much energy and so many ideas. I've really learned a lot helping with this project, having no idea that it was going to span across the country like this. And I'm just so proud. I know that my mother must be looking down from heaven saying they finally did something.
And so we invite you to a reception in the ballroom. You were given a card when you came in. Obviously, this is not a cheap project. And we're grateful for the donations we've gotten. But we're at a point now where we're getting ready to really put this thing together. I will announce tonight that the South Bend Symphony, where's Jessica? Jessica, stand up, please. Jessica Carter is a young composer who will be writing music for this documentary. She's a IU South Bend grad, yes. Yes. And a very fine composer, has had works done by the symphony. And so the work that she's going to write will be premiered next February by the symphony, which means we have to finish this film. So she can get the music done. But they will be part of a soundtrack that we're putting together. So we're happy that Jessica said yes. But what you have in your hand and what I encourage you to do is, if you think this is worthy, is to donate to the project. The South Bend Symphony and I are partnering together on this. And part of the proceeds will go to endow the third chair in the front of the orchestra in Rosemary's name. The rest will go to Chuck and Ryan because I owe them money. But that is part of the goal, is to endow the third chair in the orchestra in the front in the name of Rosemary Sanders. And so I urge you to share this with your friends. We have a website, invisibleplayer.org. As of tomorrow, this will be on, no. Yes. The trailer will be on.
With some headphones.
Yeah. The trailer will be on the website, the official website. And we're going to be raising funds for this project. I'm grateful to the South Bend Symphony Orchestra for their support. They have done a marvelous job in keeping me in budget. We've also had contributions from other people, and we appreciate any and everything that we can get to get this documentary finished. It's supposed to be 90 minutes. What you saw was about 10. We have a lot of stories to tell. A lot of stories to tell. But we appreciate you coming out. If you would make your way to the ballroom, there is also a photographer in the ballroom. We have a background, and Helen will can take pictures with Helen if you would like. And there's food, and there's something to drink, non-alcoholic, and we'll be there until we close. And I want to thank all of you for coming and spread the word about the Invisible Player. The statistics right now are that there are 2.4%, African Americans make up 2.4% of all the orchestras in America, of which there are over 2,200. It went up from 1.8% 10 years ago. Not even a whole percent. So there are a lot of reasons which we are exploring and which you'll see as we go along. But thank you again for coming out tonight, and welcome Helen, and please make your way to the ballroom and get something to eat and drink. We'll be there to talk with you. Thank you for coming to the Invisible Player.